Okay, this is the family history as best known by Dad Davison. The Coburns, and it's spelled Cockburn. John Coburn moved from Ayrshire, Scotland to Maryland, the United States in the 1800s, where he met and married Agnes Anderson. The couple resettled to Chicago, Illinois. John, for some reason at that time, changed the spelling of Cockbur to Coburn. John and Agnes had 12 children. William Coburn died at infancy, and the next child also was called William, and he married a lady called Dolly in Chicago. After her death in the auto accident, Dolly's death in the auto accident, William became a desert rat searching for gold in Arizona, where he was murdered near Kingman in 1949, presumably because he had found some gold. David Coburn, March 8, 1903 to May the 14th, 1997, married Ruth, and they had one son. Edith Coburn married Robert David, and they had Nellie Coburn, Elizabeth, Martha, consisting of 4 daughters. Agnes Frances, excuse me, I muffed it.
That's okay. You want to keep going?
John, Beth, and I cannot find any more than the above mentioned names. In other words, I couldn't find all 12. Nellie Coburn, my grandmother, left Chicago to marry my grandfather, Charles Metcalf. Nellie traveled by train to Minneapolis and riverboat from Minneapolis to Winnipeg. Charles met her at the station, at the docking, by ox cart, and took her to Portage-la-Prairie, and it took 3 days of travel for 50 miles. Grandmother was the only Coburn to come to Canada, and the remainder eventually moved to California and Colorado. Charles Metcalf left the farm and built a grain mill in Portage-la-Prairie, and it burnt to the ground in 1922 and left him destitute. The family then moved to Winnipeg, Manitoba. Nellie, my grandmother, and my grandfather Charles had 6 girls. Only 4 live: Clara, my mother, Edith, Florence, and Ruth. The younger Agnes, it's worthy to note that the younger Agnes Coburn married a Barry Fitzgerald Dunsmuir, related to the Dunsmuirs in Victoria. Another Coburn married a Moffat, after whom Moffat West of Boulder, Colorado is named, and according to Mabel Fitzharris, my cousin, another sister married a Wolcott. My second name is the same connotation, but there's 1 letter change in the middle. Amazing.
That's interesting.
Interesting to note also that Bess Coleman married Alan Allensworth and successfully ran a business out of South America. They had 2 children, Betty and Alan. Betty went to Pasadena College and was the Rose Bowl princess, in the 1940s. In the 1950s, she married the black singer Herb Jeffries, who sang for Duke Ellington. They were featured on the cover of Life magazine on one issue, and my cousin Eugene Corrigan, who still lives in Denver, Colorado, ran into Herb at a Sacramento Jazz Festival in May 1999, and he said that Betty had died several years ago. Herb and Betty had 2 little girls. Alan Allensworth was born while the family was living in South America. He suffered brain damage during his birth, apparently from an improperly used obstetrical instrument, and so suffered retardation until his death in his early 20s. I remember spending time with Alan while in Chicago. At that time, he gave me his favorite fire truck to take home, and I have kept it for years. Robert Coburn married Lottie. Lottie. I can't read that. Crabtree. Daughter of Lottie Crabtree, the famous entertainer, stage entertainer at that time of the century. And Doc Halliday, a famous gunman in the West. You have to accept the last part. Skip out Doc Halliday. Robert and Lottie lived on about a 1 acre piece of land near Pasadena. Robert worked for the railway all his life. Lottie refused offers of substantial sums of money to relate the story of her parentage because of Lottie Crabtree.
And she was the one that was related to Doc Holliday?
She and Doc Holliday actually married, and then they had a daughter called.
I see.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My last contact with the cousins, Gladys, Edna, and Mabel, was in 1976 when my wife Barbara and I visited them in their home in San Diego. They lived together and have since passed away. Eugene Corrigan and his wife Billy still correspond, and they live in Denver, Colorado. There is a painting, this is a little excerpt that I found, that was done by Sir Joshua Reynolds, an Englishman, who painted a portrait of a mother and 3 children of the Coburn family. It was brought to the United States and stored in a bank. Unfortunately, it was found to be missing from its frame. Somebody have removed it, and they have never found the artwork since. I have a picture of that if you want to see it.
So somebody ripped it off.
Yeah. Okay, the Metcalfs. Edward Rogers from Dublin, Ireland, married Anne Wellesley, and they immigrated to Canada and purchased land in St. Thomas, Ontario. They named their property Sandy Mount, same name that the Rogers land was called in Dublin. Their daughter Anne married a Thomas Robert Metcalf, born in England, and who was a soldier with the British Dragoons. Their first son was born in 1879 in the officers' quarters at Fort York. Thomas H. Metcalf and his wife Elizabeth Hatton and his family went to Manitoba in 1876 via the U.S. paddle wheel to Winnipeg, and again took ox cart to Portage-la-Prairie. Their family was as follows. William, who was a medical doctor, I can't remember his wife's name, but they had 2 boys, Lindley with the RCMP, who died unfortunately of pneumonia in the North Country, and Lloyd, who was a chemical engineer. He has since passed away also. Charles, Clara, Edith, Florence, Ruth, and 2 other girls died early. No. Charles. Got to stop.
Okay.
That was